Jeff Bezos paid 0 federal income tax in 2007, 0 in 2011. ProPublica verified it with actual IRS transcripts. And right now, half of you just felt a flash of anger. Good. Hold on to that feeling because I need it. I need you angry for exactly 90 more seconds. Then I'm going to show you something that will redirect that anger toward a completely different target. And that shift is worth more than any financial advice you will hear this year. But first, let me introduce you to 2 people. Sarah is a night shift nurse in Dallas, $85,000 a year, picks up overtime when she can. She thinks her tax rate is 22% because that is her federal bracket. Marcus runs a small plumbing company in Ohio. Same income, $85,000, but as an LLC owner. He thinks he is smarter than Sarah about taxes because he writes things off. Both of them are wrong. Both of them are losing over 60 cents of every dollar they earn. And by the end of this video, you will see exactly how, because the same invisible machine is eating your income too. The gap between what Sarah and Marcus think they pay and what they actually pay is where the entire billionaire debate falls apart. But before we get to their math, I need to destroy something you believe. You believe that the biggest threat to your wealth is some billionaire in a glass tower paying less than you. That belief is not accidental. It was engineered. The left says billionaires need to pay their fair share. The right says they already pay most of the taxes. Both are telling you partial truths, and both benefit enormously from you never doing the full arithmetic on your situation. So let me start with the question no one in Washington will ever ask on camera. If you confiscated 100% of every American billionaire's wealth, not income, everything, every stock, every house, every jet, every account, how long would it run the federal government? $7.6 trillion in total billionaire wealth. Bloomberg and Forbes data, late 2025. Federal spending last fiscal year, $7 trillion. Treasury confirmed. 13 months. That is the answer. You could seize every penny from every billionaire in America and fund the government for 13 months. Then every billionaire is broke. Every company they built has a new owner. And the machine still needs another $7 trillion the following year, and the year after that, every single year, forever. That is not a policy solution. That is a liquidation sale disguised as justice. And the fact that no politician on either side has ever done that 60-second calculation on camera tells you everything about who the billionaire debate actually serves. It does not serve you. It serves the people who need your eyes pointed anywhere except at the $7 trillion system running silently underneath every paycheck in America. Now, let us do the math they will never do. Sarah, $85,000 gross. Her W-2 shows $11,200 in federal income tax. She sees that. She feels it. She thinks that is most of what government takes from her. She's not even halfway. Here's what Sarah does not know. FICA takes 7.65% from her check. Social Security and Medicare combined, $6,500. But her hospital pays the identical amount on top of her salary. Another 7.65% she never sees. IRS Topic 751. Every economist agrees this is her money. It was designed to be invisible. In 1935, Congress deliberately split the payroll tax so workers would perceive a lower burden. Not conspiracy. Legislative history, Sarah's real federal extraction, $24,200. Income tax plus both sides of FICA. On $85,000, that is 28.5%. Federal only. We have not touched her state. Now here's where it gets interesting. Marcus in Ohio thinks he is beating this system. He has an LLC, he deducts his truck, his tools, his home office. After deductions, his taxable income is $62,000. Federal tax around $9,000. He feels clever. But Marcus has a tax. Sarah does not. Self-employment tax. 15.3% on his net earnings. Both halves of FICA with nobody splitting it. That is $9,400. His total federal is $18,400. 21.6% effective rate, lower than Sarah's 28.5%. Marcus is winning, right? Not even close. Ohio has a state income tax. After brackets, Marcus pays roughly $3,200. Sarah in Texas pays 0 state income. Suddenly Marcus is at $21,600 and Sarah is at $24,200. The gap is closing. And we have not added the taxes that treat them identically. Sales tax. Sarah pays 8.25% in Dallas on about $55,000 in annual spending, $4,500. Marcus pays 7.25% in Ohio on similar spending, $4,000. Property tax hits both. Sarah's Texas rate is aggressive, 1.6% on a $300,000 home, $4,800. Marcus pays 1.36% in Ohio, $4,080. Gas taxes, registration, phone surcharges, utility fees, licensing, $2,000 each conservatively. Let me add it up. Sarah, $35,500 in direct taxes, 41.8%. Marcus, $33,800, 39.8%. Sarah, the employee, pays more total tax than Marcus, the business owner, despite Marcus having the LLC, the deductions, the write-offs, the accountant. Two people, same income, different structures, both losing roughly 40% before we count the taxes nobody talks about. And here is where this video becomes different from anything else you have watched about taxes. Most financial content stops right here, tells you taxes are high, tells you to open a Roth IRA, cuts to a sponsor read. That approach misses more than half the extraction. The taxes you can see are the ones they let you see. The ones you cannot see are where the real money disappears. The Competitive Enterprise Institute publishes a report called 10,000 Commandments, 2025 edition. Total federal regulatory compliance costs across the American economy, $2.155 trillion, built from Bureau of Economic Analysis, data, and Office of Management and Budget figures, cited in House Budget Committee testimony. Divide that by 134 million consumer units, $16,016 per household per year. You never see a line item. You never get a receipt. But every dollar you spend carries it. Your groceries carry USDA compliance costs. Your car carries EPA and NHTSA costs. Your insurance carries ACA mandate costs. Your rent carries building code and fire code costs. Your phone bill, your electricity, your internet, all of them carry regulatory recovery fees embedded in the price. Invisible, permanent, unavoidable. 16,000 on 85,000 income, 18.8%. Sarah is now at 60.6%. Marcus at 58.6%. And I have not said the word inflation. Let me slow down here for a second. Think about what that means for Sarah specifically. She works 5 overnight shifts a week, 12 hours each. She leaves her house before her son goes to bed and gets home after he leaves for school. She misses his plays. She's not there when he scores his first goal at Saturday soccer. She picks up extra shifts in December so she can afford Christmas in a zip code with decent schools. She does all of this believing she keeps 78 cents of every dollar she earns. The truth is, she keeps about 39. Half of her waking life is spent working for a system she cannot see, cannot vote on, and has never once been explained to her in its entirety. Not by a teacher, not by a politician, not by the news. Nobody. And Marcus, he spent $3,000 on an accountant last year. He feels strategic. He feels in control. His deduction saved him $6,000 in federal tax. Meanwhile, 30 other extraction points took $33,800 from him, and his accountant never mentioned a single one, because accountants optimize the layer they can see. There are 30 layers, and somehow we are still not done. There is one more extraction that hits Sarah, Marcus, and you every single day without making a sound. Inflation. Tax Foundation defines it explicitly as a hidden tax. It erodes your purchasing power while expanding government spending power. CPI data shows roughly 20% cumulative purchasing power loss from 2020 through 2025. The government spent $7 trillion last year and collected $5.2. CBO confirmed the $1.8 trillion gap. That deficit gets financed through debt the Federal Reserve accommodates. More dollars chasing the same goods, your dollar shrinks, government spending grows. Apply a conservative 5 to 7% annual erosion to what remains of Sarah and Marcus's purchasing power. Their total government claim lands between 63 and 67%. Everything I just cited comes from a government agency or peer-reviewed research. I want you to verify every number because these figures surviving your scrutiny is the point. 63 to 67%. From a nurse who thinks she pays 22, from a business owner who thinks his write-offs make him smart. Now, that anger I asked you to hold at the beginning, the Bezos anger, let me honor it by giving you what no politician or YouTuber ever will, both sides of the data. IRS 2022 filings, Tax Foundation compiled the numbers. The top 1% earned 22.4% of all income. They paid 40.4% of all federal income taxes, more than the bottom 90% combined. $864 billion versus $599 billion. Average effective rate for the top 1%, 26.1%. Bottom 50%, 3.7%. Those numbers are real. They demolish the narrative that wealthy Americans pay nothing. But I refuse to stop there because there is a second data set that tells a different story at the very top. NBER working paper, 34170. UC Berkeley researchers. They matched Forbes' 400 wealth data to actual IRS returns from 2010 to 2020. The 400 richest Americans paid total effective rates of about 24% across all federal taxes. Meanwhile, top labor earners, surgeons, law firm partners, tech executives with massive W-2 salaries paid around 45%. Why the 21-point gap? At that level, wealth grows through unrealized gains. You own a stock, it doubles. You owe nothing until you sell. You never sell. You borrow against it instead. ProPublica documented Bezos reporting $80,000 in salary while his wealth grew by billions. Musk paid $0 in 2018. Soros paid zero 3 years running. All legal, all by design of the code itself. Now ask yourself something honestly. Did you know both of those data sets existed? Or did you only know the one that confirms what your side already believes? Because most people only know one, and that is not an accident. The top 1% pays a disproportionately enormous share of income taxes, and the top 400 use legal mechanisms to pay lower effective rates than their own employees. Both statements are provably true at the same time. If anyone only tells you one, they are manipulating you. Here is the question that should change how you consume every piece of financial news from today forward. Why does the debate about 400 families consume all the oxygen in American tax policy, while 30 plus taxes eating 60+% of your income gets zero coverage, zero hearings, zero outrage, and zero protests? Think about that. Millions of people will march over a billionaire's tax rate. Nobody has ever marched over regulatory compliance costs that take $16,000 from every household in America every single year. Nobody holds a sign about the employer side of FICA that was hidden from workers by design in 1935. Nobody trends a hashtag about $1 trillion in annual interest payments on debt they did not vote for. Because your attention on the billionaire question is the mechanism that prevents you from calculating your own number. One party needs you to think billionaires are the problem. The other needs you to think they are the solution. Neither needs you to audit the $7 trillion infrastructure that feeds on your labor, regardless of who sits in the White House. $5 billion borrowed every single day. Debt held by the public, $30.3 trillion. Interest payments crossed $1 trillion for the first time in history. 19% of all federal revenue. Your household share of just the interest exceeds $7,000 a year. Not $1 of that builds a road. Not $1 funds a classroom. It services decisions made before you could vote on them. CBO projects $1.9 trillion in deficit for fiscal 2026, $26 trillion in cumulative deficits over the next decade. Debt heading past the World War II record as a share of the economy. Not Republican math, not Democrat math, nonpartisan CBO math. Download the report yourself. Even if you tripled the effective rate on every billionaire tomorrow morning, Sarah still loses 63%. Her FICA does not change. Her sales tax does not change. The $16,000 in regulatory costs baked into every price she pays does not change. The purchasing power destruction from $1.8 trillion in annual deficit spending does not change. Marcus still loses 58%. His write-offs do not touch FICA. They do not touch sales tax. They do not touch inflation. They do not touch $16,000 in embedded costs. His accountant optimized one layer. 30 other layers never moved. Their wealth is not being stolen by a billionaire. It is being siphoned by 30-plus extraction points built into the structure of daily American life, most of which were specifically engineered to be invisible. And every minute spent debating Bezos is a minute not spent seeing the architecture that actually determines whether you build wealth or just survive. This is where information must become education. Calculate yours. Not your bracket, not your refund. Your real number. Federal income tax. Full FICA, both sides. State income tax. Sales taxes on what you actually spend each year. Property taxes, whether you pay directly or through rent. Gas, excise, phone, licensing, registration. Then add $16,000 in regulatory pass through costs embedded in your prices. Then measure what your dollar bought 5 years ago versus today. When you finish, you will understand something most Americans never grasp. Wealth building is not hard because you lack discipline. It is hard because the system takes 60+% of your output before you make your first voluntary financial decision. Everything you invest, save, and build comes from what is left, the 30-something percent. 40 years of promises from both sides have produced $7 trillion in spending, $30 trillion in debt, and a $1 trillion interest bill that buys you nothing. Nobody is coming to fix this, but the math responds to one thing: awareness. When you see all 30-plus extraction points, you stop optimizing for one bracket and start optimizing for the total. You stop arguing about billionaires at Thanksgiving and start rebuilding your entire financial strategy around the real number. Subscribe if this is the kind of analysis you have been looking for. No guru energy, no political tribe, just verified math. 67% of your income touches government before it touches your life. The question was never whether billionaires pay enough. The question is whether you even know what you pay. And now that you do, the next question is what you are going to do about it. That answer is yours, not theirs.